Hey everybody, I'm Ryo Yamaguchi, the publicist at Canyon Press, and you are watching season 2 of our interview series, Line Break, which goes off the page and into the homes and minds of our beloved poets. I've been carrying on the dream, really sharing in the dream of my predecessor from season 1, Laura Buccieri, of wanting to see more poets represented on screen, talking shop, answering questions, and taking us behind the scenes of how they do what they do. So for today's episode, I'm really excited. Shangyang Fang and I have been communicating a lot back and forth, but this is the first time we've really sat down to have a conversation, and I couldn't be more thrilled. So Shangyang, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. How's your day been going? What have you been listening to this morning?
Yeah. Hi, wow. This morning, I have not been listening to anything. Recently, I've been listening just to Mozart. And that's been transforming and magical to me. But that's that. This morning I was listening to the birds singing outside the window. Nothing much happened because it's still quite early and I wake up late.
Yeah, is spring coming there? I mean, you're in the Bay Area, right? Yeah.
Oh yes, the pear blossoms are just ravishing by the roadside. They're just so beautiful. The other day I just stopped there for 10 minutes just looking at them. Yeah, it's very beautiful. Springtime.
Yeah. But that's wonderful. I think I was mentioning before, it's getting to be spring here a little bit in the desert, although we have some rain coming through, which is nice. We need the rain, Well, I was hoping before we jump too quickly into things, we like to have folks introduce themselves, on this show. And so I was hoping you could introduce yourself, your name, any pronouns you want to identify, where you live, your most recent book, anything else you want us to know?
Oh, cool. I'm Shangyang Fang. I am living in the Bay Area right now. My pronoun is he, him, his. My recent book is Burying the Mountain, published by Canyon Press.
Yeah, that's great. Of course, I've got it right here. Everyone. Yay! I love this book so much, and I love it.
Thank you.
This time of year, it's lapidary. I mean, I think it is really in love with the world at the same time that it's challenged by it. I think I'm kind of interested to ask you some questions about that, specifically, and your relationship to art, of course. I just enjoyed the Los Angeles Review conversation just came out this morning that we saw with Derek Austin. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it yet or not, but
I have not. I always feel embarrassed to read my own interview and look at my own words. And after this book come out, except the readings I go to, I have to read those poems. I don't read it. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I was really excited, and it gave us a little bit of it gave me, Derek's read of your book and just the conversation you had gave me certainly some ideas. Very rapidly, though, I was just looking at it this morning before sitting down to talk and stuff. But I do kind of like Laura really liked to go back, and I want to do that too, and kind of go back in time a little bit before we start talking about the book and everything, to a time when you really kind of first came alive with the arts. And the way that she would phrase this, and the way I like to phrase it, is when you first recognized yourself in a work of art, when you first saw yourself, and what that piece was. And
that's a very hard question, and it's very beautifully phrased, recognizing oneself. Well, I'm sure there are times I recognize myself in various forms of art, but it's not usually what I seek for in reading a poem or going to the gallery or listening to music. I always think that I have enough of myself in real life, and I just go to art and poetry to not find myself. And I feel I become unrecognizable when I truly fall in love with a piece of work. And at large, the known world, the familiar world, is also made less recognizable. I do remember the time when I was very young, a kid, my grandfather took me to a park to see the lotus blossoms. It's a tradition. When the flowers are blossoming, you go to the park and see them. And it's in summer, the whole lake is just filled with lotuses, enormous and white and pink, so beautiful. And my grandfather, he's kind of a secret poet. He recited a poem by the Song Dynasty poet Zhou Bangyan. And I can still recite the line. It's 36坡人未到，水配风霜无数，翠叶吹凉，玉容消酒，更洒孤蒲雨， 嫣然摇动，冷香飞上诗句. Well, the whole thing is a description of lotus, and I don't know how to translate it, but and I think the last line, 冷香飞上诗句, it probably means something like its cold scent, referring to the flower. Its cold scent or fragrance flies onto my poem. But the poem doesn't mention the actual name of the flower. It is so strange and beautiful. I thought, and then when my grandfather recited that to me, I thought, well, the lotus in front of me, my eyes are beautiful enough, but the poem I felt was just more beautiful. It's describing to me a lotus I have never seen before. Not that it's an untruthful account of the flower, but it's really revealing to me some aspect of the flower I did not see and cannot see with this little mind. It changes, I think it changes my perception about that object, that lotus, forever. And I thought it was just magical. Poetry is magic. And a similar experience would be, I think in middle school, I read a Chinese translation of Federico Garcia Lorca's poem, Romance Somnambulo. And I was just deeply shaken. I don't know what it means and what it tried to tell me, but it was creating a world for me to enter where I don't see myself as myself. I remember the beginning of the poem. I love you, green. How I love you, green. Something like that. The horse, the green wind, green branches, the horse in the mountain, the boat far out in the sea, and there was a line, an image that I would never forget after decades, reading it. It was something like the moonlight holding the body of a girl, the icicles of moonlight holding the body of a girl upon the water. And it was so mysterious and just changed me in a way. I think those are probably some of the earlier moments when I was just deeply shaken by poetry.
Yeah. I really hear what you're saying about this idea of like losing the self in a work of art, or like even like an erasure of the self. And I think that's an idea that's particularly in the kind of the era we live in, and especially in the US, that's really hard for people to grapple with. I mean, the whole idea is to codify the self, right? Is to make yourself like this stone statue or something that exists has definition. But I really like this idea of the release of being able to forget about who you are or something, in a work of art.
The conversation I had with Derek on Los Angeles Reviews of Book, one line I love from his book, it was the first poem. The ending line was, "This is how I escape, like a little foam." And that's how I feel I'm reading or just throwing myself into the art. That's how I feel.
Yeah. I'm staring here at this line that I copied from that interview where you say, "Art to me is a reality that hurts less."
It is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and of course I'm such a positive person, like, and I think there's a sense of art as a refuge and like and a protection. But I'm also really enamored with this idea that art is helping you unify yourself with like the universe or something, And,
absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Oh man, amazing. So, well, do you want to read a poem now? Does this seem like a good time? Do you have one? Like, yeah.
Sure. I don't have one, but I guess I'll just have to do it.
This is the best kind of poem, the random poem.
The random poem. I like that. I'll read this poem, Tether.
Great.
Tether. The tea is turning cold. It holds a winter in its mind. Soon it will be a mattress of dead pool, and the beetles will lather their brittle shells in this blue bathroom. The birds continue sighing, I'd rather. I write to make myself unrecognized. Inside the sterilized window, the spruce stays, magpies erased. The mountains are approaching, my lines must be revised, because you were right. It's best to read Russian novels in winter. It is always snowing. Everyone is sad.
That's great. The ending is so simple but effective, you know. And I don't know. I part of that to me is a result of you know, I think in this Los Angeles Review interview and just elsewhere, you know, people talk a lot about ekphrasis, you know, with your poetry, and that's something I want to talk about more deeply. But at the moment, just from that poem, I also love to think of you as a nature writer, someone who's very engaged with the natural world. And I'm kind of curious, like, if you organize art and nature as like separate categories, or if they blend in your mind. And I'm also interested in how you approach both of them from a material way. Like, there's so much texture and color. I have one question here that's just like, I want to talk about color in your poems. Yeah.
Well, that's so beautifully put, and it asks a question I never think about. I never think about. Really, did not put much thought into art or nature. I don't know my work well enough to answer, but I do think I regard them as just one piece of external reality. You know, it's just the material that where I see probably a fragment of me could somehow exist alternatively. I don't know, how do I work on them? Can you elaborate that question?
Yeah. Well, maybe another way of thinking about this is like some forebears that you've gone to, because of course part of ekphrasis is interacting with lots of other artists, you know.
Oh, yes.
And so like one thing, like, I mean, I would love one way I thought about having this interview is like, let's just talk about all the art that you love and that we
I love that.
You know?
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that, but let me articulate that a little differently, which is, what about other writers who write about art that you've loved and that you've gone to? Or if you don't have that list, just in general, if you're going to write about a work of art, what are your first steps? Like, what do you do? Do you have to sit with it for a long time, or, you know? Yeah.
Oh no, I think it's very differently. There's different poems that does it different. For example, argument of situation. I have to imagine the whole scenario. The art is through imagination. The actual piece of art. It does not exist. Now I let the secret out. And then for the Foretaste of Disaster poem, that painting by Anthony Van Dyck, that painting of Icarus and Daedalus, that I stood there for half an hour in the museum and just looking at the painting until I just totally forgot about it. And I walked out and wrote that poem. My first step would be the mind. How do I interpret and elaborate it? Sometimes I view each painting is it's something that's coming to an end. Even it's showing in its sequence that something is about to happen, but that about to happen is where I can put myself in, where I can make something else happen, just like a branching of a different timeline from that painting through my words. I start with description. I think that's always the best place to start, by describing the world. By describing, you create a world, and after you created that world, you can walk inside it and know what you want to find. I think that's always the process. I ask my students also to practice ekphrasis writing, because interpretation of something else, interpretation of a work of art, which is objective, but it's also a piece of consciousness. That process, I think, it always shows how powerful a mind is, how powerful the mind can create, can transform, and just, I always like to do that myself and to my students.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic to me now recently, because you know, so the New York Elisa Gabbard at the New York Times just published a really deep feature on the Auden poem. I don't know if you've seen it, but
no, I have not.
Oh, you would love it. It's her whole interpretation of the Musée des Beaux-Arts, and she looks at all the different paintings and where Auden's getting influence from. It's a wonderful piece. Like, but it's also about writing about art at a time of calamity. You know, that poem is so much about calamity, and of course we live in calamitous times. Yeah. Indifference.
I mean, that poem about suffering, they were never wrong, those old masters. It just begins magnificently. And yeah, the indifference that is shown, the horse scratching its back on the tree. I remember an image from the poem. Oh dear, it's speaking a lot of our time also. Yeah.
This makes me leap to a question that I had for you. This is kind of shifting gears a little bit, but I want to talk about the erotic in your poems.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And about love, and especially forbidden love, forbidden gay love. There's something about forbidden love in your poems that is both deeply tender and deeply dangerous. And I really wonder about that dynamic, and I wonder if you could kind of unpack that a little bit, or how you approach love in your poems. Do you consider all your poems love poems?
No, I do not consider all my poems love poems. I hope they are, but I think love poems are the most difficult to write about. And by saying love, it's all, often I feel it's political in a sense, because it is the politics about, I think the intrinsic interest is about conflict. It's always the compromise. It's always, the benefit of one group, of certain group of people, and there's conflict going on. And I think a love relationship is in that way. But the reason I don't think my poem are necessarily love poem, because the conflict is not very dramatic. It's the speaker is always, I think, kind of either indifferent or submissive. So I do not think that calls to the connotation of love. It calls to the connotation, I think, of the failure of desire, or the incurable loneliness. It's the existential crisis. And I also, I think those poems are quite subtle. They're not explicit queer poems, gay poems, because I think that's from my upbringing, that where that identity is still oppressed in China. I remember, I don't know if I should say this, but I think I should. When I go back to China in the summer, and I was invited to do a very prestigious menu of poetry, lecture, reading, and so on and so forth. And I was the host, the organization tried to protect me by asking me not to say the word gay, homosexual, and I mean, it's 2022. And I write about those, and I cannot talk about them. It's frustrating, and it's sad, and because, well, in China it's very different from here. If you say something like that, you will get consequence, and I've been told what the consequence would be. So it was, and I think I carried that subtlety of, how to describe a thing, like the lotus poem, describing the lotus without saying the word lotus in the poem, and you're suddenly estranged by that notion of either homosexual or erotic, that sensibility. I still try to figure that out. I don't think there's a solution in this book. I think it's an ongoing question I'm asking myself, and how can I approach it differently?
Yeah. I kind of perceive this issue as something that's about freedom and constraint, which is something that's also in craft, also. And
absolutely. I mean, freedom and constraint. And I think, was it by Borges who said that censorship is the mother of metaphors? And I think that speaks so much of some of the stuff I'm writing. And but I don't want censorship, of course, in my work.
No, of course.
But there's a sense where it creates something. I'm not like saying it's good, but there's some creativity comes after the high pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is great. I felt that I wanted to get to that statement in a way, because I feel it so much in the poems. It occurs to me, so this kind of leads to another thing I've been kind of thinking about, and when thinking about when we're going to talk and everything. And I think of I think of you as a traveler. You know, I mean, obviously you've traveled here, you know, from China, and you've uprooted yourself and you're in a new home, but you've also traveled around the US a lot. And also an intellectual traveler. I mean, you have a degree in engineering. You were writing a lot of prose when you were in the MFA. I mean, you kind of mentioned that sort of thing. And I wonder if you think of yourself as a restless spirit, and also if you think of yourself as restless in the poems. Like so many poems I feel could just keep going. Like I just feel like they pull me along forever, you know? Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. I think I was restless. Now I'm resting. I think some of my new works shows that that I'm approaching to an atmosphere of stasis. But I don't think the poems are static. But I do think I just want to run away. Well, from my family, also run away. By traveling, I'm trying to run away from the place wherever I live for a while. I just try to run away from that, and poetry, running away from myself. But in the end, you will find that, yeah, at the end of the tunnel that you're running toward to, you meet another self that the whole process seems inescapable. I do yeah. I do think, yeah, I don't know. I think I was restless. In recent poems, I try to counter that. In my recent writing, I want myself to rest on something. I want myself just to sit down and look at the thing without, because oh God, I'm sorry, my articulation, I'm trying to forming a thought, and English is always frustrating. By keep going the poem, sometimes you turn to another phrase, you turn to another image, you turn to another statement that indicates newer thought, you turn to well, another narrative in the poem. That's also, you are escaping from the previous scenario that the poem is establishing. I think that was my older process of writing. Now I just want to sit in that small space that is claustrophobic, that is constraining, that like when Cavafy sit in the room and writing about the wall and saying that there is going to be when the morning comes, the dawn comes on, and the window is shining through, that's just another tyranny. That's just another piece of wall. And I think, you know, it's so beautiful. And I want to be there for a while. Now I just want to be in that walled place where I have nowhere to run to. And I have to find another way, a path that is not visible to me yet. Yeah.
It's really moving. It's really powerful. I mean, so many images there that I'm a swirl with. I mean, that just the idea of running through the tunnel and then only to meet your next self or something, you know, is just such a wonderful thing. But yeah.
And often I hope, you know, at the end of the tunnel, it's the newer self, you know, that the Shangyang in 2 years. But sometimes you find a child who was the Shangyang, you know, being traumatized and tormented 15 years ago, you know, you find that self again, and that could be a surprise too. But so I think even you find an older self through the running, I'm different. So in the end, I'm meeting a newer self no matter what, because I became different.
I'm a great believer in that. Also, then even if what you're looking at in front of you is an echo of something from the past, it still is an echo that comes through that perturbations of time, you know. And yeah, but the Cavafy line, I mean, that idea, I feel like I've heard that before. I don't know if I've heard that line specifically, but that idea of like the tyranny of dawn and the repetition.
Oh, yes.
Stuff, you know. Yeah, but I'm so curious where maybe you think that impulse comes from. I mean, do you think that you have found yourself in a new settled way that has durability and permanence, or do you think that you're just caught in like a dialectic of freedom and constraint where, you know, you
mean now?
Now, yeah, right now, yeah.
Oh dear, I think, well, I just think I'm tired. The answer is very simple. I'm tired. But I think after a while I start running again. You know, it's always the back and forth.
Good. I'd hope so. Yeah. part of like, I feel like I have to address this with poets these days lately, and talking about calamity and this kind of running and things. And I'm just sort of curious what your hopes are for the future, for your own future, for, you know, even the future of China and your relationship, you know, going back home or going back to China, yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but just in general,
Wow.
how do you picture the future?
That's a very difficult question. I I don't think I have an answer.
Yeah,
Uh, well, I think my old teacher Jane once told me that it's always not very hard for poets to write about the present and the past. That's where the poet draws their sources from. It's
yeah,
always the most difficult to write about the future, and to imagine the future is as difficult somehow. Um, Life and work is very different. I Work is a mystery. My work, my
mhm,
writing right now is still
yeah,
mysterious to me, as it has always been, and
mhm,
I find that anxious and comforting. Uh, Life, I have no idea. I
yeah,
I also just, yeah, I don't know about it. I'm being torn uh, by the two ideas of trying to stay in the United States or going back to China. Um, I do want to make a change somehow in China. I do
yeah,
want to get more people to love poetry. I want to teach poetry workshops in China also. Uh, but I'm not sure how that would happen.
yeah,
I'm being surrounded by more this time going back to China in summer. It's the first time I've been surrounded by young poets writing in Chinese about my same age. And I think some of their poems are just astonishing, and their energy just moved me. It just remind me of myself, because they don't have a community. They don't have a
yeah,
real community. They don't, the publications of poetry is deeply censored. Often censor the places of the name, whether you can write about that place or not. So
yeah,
geographic location sometimes is just being erased from the representation in the text. But then I saw them. I was just deeply moved and touched. They believe they're poets, like I once believed that I was a poet when I was younger. You know, at that age, you feel so faithful to this thing. You feel I can believe I can do something. I'm the next Keats, I'm the next Rimbaud. But then in the end, it turns out that, by my age, Keats is already dead, and then everything vanished. Uh, I think I
but
found,
you know,
yeah,
Wallace Stevens wasn't publishing until late, you know, late in his life, and there's different ways to think of it, I think. Yeah, yeah,
that is true. That is very true. But well, well, I cannot argue about that. That is very true. But
no, sure,
but the
sure.
whole process, it makes me feel disenchanted about this term poet. But I'm glad that poetry remains very mysterious.
Yeah,
Yeah, for future, I don't know. I want to have to read more, to write more, to meet more aspiring souls that want to write poems, and I do think that by writing poem is a way to change the world. Uh,
yeah,
is one way to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this, because I was changed. My world was altered by poetry, and it's never the same. So I want to keep passing that down to many poets who, I think, the larger context, for example, in China, they don't have the community, the opportunity to do something like this.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's powerful. It's fascinating and hopeful to think of you already articulating yourself into well, being a teacher, you know, and I mean, yeah. Well, let me ask that specifically. I mean, like, for thinking about the future, I mean, do you want to teach? Like, is that like, yeah,
I would love to teach. That's also one thing that, I was changed by by so many of my great teachers. I think
Yeah.
we both know Bridget Peckin Kelly.
Yes.
When I was trying to be a poet, or trying to write poetry at early age, I applied to. I'm sure you're familiar with the story. I applied to
but
so
tell us,
many.
please. Yeah.
No, yeah,
Mhm.
I applied to so many English majors in American universities, and I got rejected from all of them because my English sucked. And well, I thought I would give up writing. I would never write again. And then I met Bridget, and she said, well, you can do this. And I was like, me, I can do this? And I did, and I'm still doing it.
Beautifully. Yeah.
I, I think that changes me. I think being a teacher can really ignite people. And yeah, that's one of my aspirations too. I do want to do that.
Yeah.
Pass down this passion for poetry.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something I feel. I mean, here at Copper Canyon, we're of course always trying to manage that kind of generational gift, that happens through it. And there's something that, I mean, I've been avoiding this question, but I'll just ask it anyway, which is,
oh, please.
One part of this, and as we're talking about this, and hearing this kind of fraught confrontation with this idea of a future, and wanting to think about the present and the past instead. I mean, it leads me to this idea of eternity, and the immemorial.
Oh, wow.
And I wonder if you believe in eternity, like, or if that's what the space a poem creates, or
Oh, wow, these are huge topics. I think
yes, yeah.
it's better for me to be asked these kind of questions when I'm 30 years later, because
Sure.
I'm worried about, I would say something that will be embarrassed in future. But I do believe that poetry creates a sense of eternity. One aspect is, well, I'm still reading poems by people who died 1,000, 2,000 years ago. That's one way of eternity, that the consciousness can travel through time and space to be present in front of you. And I think one thing about eternity is that it's not constricted to this time-space reality we're living in. It's non-linear. And well, I do think that eternity is no difference from the transience, from the brevity. When I think about the haiku poets, year after year on the monkey's face, a monkey's face, or even in Kyoto, hearing a cuckoo's cry, I long for Kyoto, or what a strange thing to be alive under the cherry blossoms, or the world of dew is the world of dew, and yet. I mean, those moments, it's so transient. The moment standing under the cherry blossom tree, it only lasts for a week or two, or a few weeks, that ravishing beauty, but it is eternal. That moment is being locked. That moment is similar as the Lorca's moment of the girl being held by the icicle of moonlight upon the water. Those moments, I don't know if it's objectively eternal, but it is eternal to me, because I cannot erase it from my memory anymore. And I think it will continue. I can't talk about eternity, but I do think that poetry on and on again manifests that. I think, all these magic is our effort against death.
Magic is our effort against death. This is great. Well, I appreciate you indulging my question, and I'm glad you did, because that was really amazing. Just to hear you work through that, and to hear all those wonderful haiku poems, really great. Okay, well, I think this brings us to the poem now, if you feel ready for it.
Oh, yes.
So this is from someone else. This is from a poem you admire.
Yes. I feel embarrassed reading my work. This is a poem I just love. Whenever I'm drunk, I just return it time and time again. There are many poems that I'll return to, but this is one of them. It's a poem by the Polish poet Zbigniew Herbert. It's called Elegy of 14 Brass. It's written from the perspective, the persona of Fortinbras toward the dead Hamlet at the end of the chase. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll just start. Now that we're alone, we can talk, Prince, man to man, though you lie on the stairs and see no more than a dead ant. Nothing but black sun with broken rays. I could never think of your hands without smiling. And now that they lie on the stone like fallen nests, they're as defenseless as before. The end is exactly this. The hands lie apart, the sword lies apart, the head apart, and the knight's feet in soft slippers. You will have a soldier's funeral without having been a soldier. The only ritual I'm acquainted with a little. There will be no candles, no singing, only cannon fuses and bursts, crap dragged on the pavement, helmets, boots, artillery, horses, drums. I know nothing exquisite. Those will be my maneuvers before I start to rule. One has to take the city by the neck and shake it a bit. Anyhow, you had to perish, Hamlet. You were not for life. You believed in crystal notions, not in human clay, always twitching as if asleep. You hunted chimeras wolfishly. You crunched the air only to vomit. You knew no human thing. You did not know even how to breathe. Now you have peace, Hamlet. You accomplished what you had to, and you have peace. The rest is not silence, but belongs to me. You chose the easier part of an elegant thrust, but what isn't heroic death compared with eternal watching with a cold apple in one's hand on a narrow chair with a view of the ant hill and the clock style? Adieu, Prince. I have tasks, a sower project, and the decree on prostitutes and beggars. I must also elaborate a better system of prisons, since, as you justly said, Denmark is a prison. I go to my affairs. This night is born a star named Hamlet. What we shall never meet, what I shall leave behind will not be worth a tragedy. It is not for us to greet each other or bid farewell. We live on archipelagos, and that water, these words, what can they do? What can they do, Prince?
Thank you, Shangyang. Oh, there's so much there, and so I don't know. It's so mournful, but not. It's so frank. Yeah. What do you love about that poem? Yeah.
Everything. It's the poem is everything, and I think it's very important to our time. One has to take the city by the neck and shake it a bit. I think one has to take the world by the neck and shake it a bit. And also, I think the last sentence that is questioning the notion of empathy, questioning the notion of communication, and to that end, I think it's also what we're doing in poetry. It's really an important question about poetry. That water, these words, what can they do? What can they do, Prince? That question is one of the questions that just keeps jingling my head. I can never forget about that, and it's pushing me to go forward. What can they do? I don't know, but I'm still doing it.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely beautiful. I think we'll just leave it at that, and that just keep doing it, keep pushing forward. That's great. Okay, well, I'm so glad we finally got to chat, and
I'm so happy for this chat also.
Yeah, and there's so much more. I mean, we barely talked about Bridget, and we didn't talk about Brahms at all. So
oh dear, Brahms, yes.
So much more, but for another time, for another season, I suppose. So just for now, I'm just so indebted, and all my thanks for you taking the time and being on the show.
I'm so thankful for all your brilliant questions, because I'm lazy. I would never think about those things had you not asked me those questions. I think after sometimes I feel like after the interview, I have to look at myself deeper and just think about these questions that I think it's always the question that transform people. It's not a statement, it's the question. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm glad I could provoke a little bit of thought, so well, thanks again, Shangyang.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll keep reading the poems.